My name's David. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. Turned 30 this year, a milestone that hit a little harder than I expected. I always thought by now I'd have some kind of foundation, a real family, not the performative version I grew up with. The truth is, I've spent most of my adult life propping up people who were more than happy to take everything I gave, right up until the moment they decided I wasn't useful anymore. My family's always been complicated. I'm not talking about the kind of dysfunction that gets joked about over wine. I mean real fractures. Debt, guilt, obligation. The invisible glue that held us together. Growing up, I was the fixer, the mediator, the responsible one who made sure the lights stayed on. I was the guy who helped my mom keep her mortgage current when she lost her job, who leased a truck in my dad's name when his credit tanked, who co-signed a loan for a family business that folded before it even opened. I swallowed it all for years. The unspoken expectation that I'd clean up after everyone's bad decisions. The thanks that never came. But I kept doing it because I thought that's what love looked like. Sacrifice. And I truly believe that maybe, just maybe, one day they'd show up for me the way I always showed up for them. So, for my 30th, I rent a lake house. Nothing crazy, just something nice on Lake Pleasant. I stocked the fridge, paid in full for a long weekend, and sent out invitations weeks in advance. My siblings, my parents, a couple of cousins. I figured just this once, maybe they'd come celebrate me. They didn't. No one showed. No calls. No last-minute excuses. Just silence. The kind that creeps under your skin and makes you feel like a ghost at your own damn party. I sat on the deck that night, wrapped in a hoodie, staring out at the still water, and thinking maybe I'd gotten the dates wrong. Maybe something came up. I kept checking my phone like a fool, waiting for a buzz, a call, a message. Anything. Nothing. The fridge was still packed. I bought their favorites. My dad's IPA, my mom's weird vanilla creamer, even that dairy-free crap my sister insists on. I'd even gone so far as to stock Esmore's ingredients, like this was some kind of summer camp reunion. But the only person who ever lit the fire pit was me. By the second morning, I stopped looking at my phone. I just couldn't do it anymore. And then, late that afternoon, while scrolling absent-mindedly, I saw it. My sister's post. Family weekend. A photo of her, my mom, my dad, my brother, all of them smiling on the dock of some other lake. Not Lake Pleasant. I knew the place, though. It was Watson Lake, 2 hours north. I'd gone hiking there as a kid. It had the same jagged granite rocks and narrow shoreline you can't mistake. They hadn't just forgotten. They hadn't missed it because of an emergency. They had made other plans. Together. Without me. They went to a different lake. And posted about it. I didn't say anything. Not to them. Not on the post. Not even to the two friends I'd quietly invited as backup, who also bailed last minute with vague texts, and something came up. I just sat there, letting the betrayal settle in like dust on furniture no one's touched in years. That night, I stood in the kitchen with the refrigerator door open, staring at all the food no one would eat. Cold cuts, deviled eggs, 2 kinds of potato salad, all untouched. I opened a bottle of wine I'd meant to save for the group and drank it straight from the neck like a man in a cheap indie film who finally realizes he's the joke in someone else's story. The next day, I checked my bank accounts. That was when I remembered. I hadn't just hosted a party no one came to. I had also, quietly, stopped paying the bills that weren't mine. 3 weeks earlier, I'd canceled the automatic payment on my mom's mortgage. I let the lease on my dad's truck default. I'd pulled my name off a business loan that my uncle had forgotten I co-signed when he shut down his landscaping company without telling me. No big announcement. No confrontación. Just a decision. They didn't notice right away. But that night, the same night I saw their lake post, my mom texted me. For words. Did something happen? I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed. Yes. I finally got the hint. And I hit send. I didn't get a response right away. I figured she might call, might try to explain, or worse, deflect like she always did when things got uncomfortable. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't wait for it. I just turned my phone face down, poured the rest of that wine into a mug, and sat on the floor like a guy who wasn't sure which version of his life had just collapsed. The one where he was the dependable son, or the one where he was finally done pretending that meant anything. The silence lasted a full day, and then the text came. Not from my mom, from my dad. He didn't ask how I was doing, didn't ask if I was okay, or why I hadn't been around. He just sent one line, like we were business partners and I'd missed a meeting. Truck payment didn't go through. Can you check on that? Can I check on that? Not you. Not we miss you at the lake. Not even what's going on. Just cold, clinical, like I was a utility company with a glitch. That's when something hardened in me. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't even reply right away. I just opened my notes app and made a list of every account, every bill, every automatic payment I'd ever covered. Not for me, for them. Just to remind myself that it hadn't been in my head, that I hadn't imagined this quiet extraction of my time and money and energy. Over the last 6 years, I had paid 41 months of my mom's mortgage, 3 years of my dad's truck lease, $8,400 toward my sister's emergency dental bill. She Venmo'd me once, paid back nothing. The down payment on my cousin Brian's business loan, which folded in 11 months. Roughly $2,000 a year in random. Can you help us just this once? Bailouts, groceries, phone bills, late fees, overdrafts. And the kicker, $14,000 I put on my own credit card for a roof repair on their house because you're good with banks and your rate's lower. It looked worse written out. Not just because of the money, though that stung, but because of the pattern. The way they always needed something, but never offered anything back that didn't come with strings, guilt, or gaslighting. Later that evening, I finally texted back. I stopped the payments. Not my responsibility anymore. Dad didn't respond. But 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice sounded tight. Not angry, not yet. That would come. No, this was the voice she used when she was trying to act calm. The voice that always meant she was walking the emotional hallway between denial and damage control. She asked what happened. Said she was confused. Said she thought I was doing okay, financially. And I told her, without rage, without drama, that I was. But that didn't mean I wanted to be everyone's unpaid safety net while they skipped birthdays, made plans behind my back, and couldn't even be bothered to check in. She went quiet. Then she said, "We never asked you to do any of that." And I laughed. Not the joyful kind, the hollow kind. The kind that comes when someone rewrites history in real time and looks you in the eye like you're the one making things up. I wish I could say that was the moment I finally saw my parents clearly. But the truth is, I've been squinting at the truth for years. This wasn't new. This was just the first time I had stopped explaining it away. I remember being 16, sitting at that same kitchen table, watching my dad hand my little brother, Ryan, a set of keys to a car I didn't even know we could afford. Brand new, shiny, not a scratch on it. Meanwhile, when I turned 16, I took the bus. And when I asked why Ryan got a car and I didn't, my dad just said, "He's a little more social. He needs it." That was the logic in our house. The person who needed more got more. And somehow, I always needed less. College? Ryan's tuition was covered from the start. Mine? I worked 2 part-time jobs and still graduated with $28,000 in debt. They said I was independent, that I could handle it, and I could. That wasn't the point. The point was, they never even offered. I was the kid who didn't ask for much and got even less. The quiet one, the responsible one, the one who they knew would figure it out, and so they never bothered to help. But if Ryan stubbed his toe, everyone dropped everything. Mom would go full triage nurse, and Dad would practically declare a state of emergency. And I'd just sit there, invisible in my own home, knowing full well that if I broke down, they'd probably ask me if I could wait until next week. They were dealing with a lot right now. I don't know when I internalized the idea that love had to be earned through service. But I did. Every paid bill, every forgiven debt, every drop plan to run to their rescue. It was me trying to matter, trying to earn what Ryan just woke up with. And I did matter in a way, as a tool, as a utility, not as a son. That realization hit harder than I expected. Because once you stop performing the role they cast you in, they don't recognize you anymore. And when they don't recognize you, they don't reach for you. They punish you with distance, with silence, with group lake trips where you're not even an afterthought. You're just not a thought at all. So when my mom finally said, "We never asked you to do any of that," what I heard wasn't denial. What I heard was something worse. You were useful, and now you're not. The part that really messed with me was how natural it all felt. Not the silence, not even the betrayal. The role. The role I'd been playing my whole life without even realizing I was on stage. They called me steady, reliable, the one they didn't have to worry about. And I wore that label like a badge for years, thinking it meant I was strong, that they trusted me, that being the one no one worried about was a kind of compliment. But standing alone in that lake house, watching the ice melt in drinks no one touched, I realized what it actually meant. They never planned to catch me if I fell, because they didn't think I would, because I never had. And that's the trap, isn't it? When you make a habit of surviving without help, people forget you're capable of breaking, too. So I decided to break, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, intentionally. I made a list. Not of the payments, I'd already done that. This was different. This was a list of names, each one tied to a favor I never asked back for. Each one attached to a loan I never called in. Each one carrying the weight of a version of me I didn't want to be anymore. It was time to stop giving. Not out of spite. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. The first thing I did was call the bank. I removed myself as a guarantor from the business loan I'd co-signed for Uncle Kenny. They said I need his signature to make it clean, but I could flag it for risk review. I did. Next, I shut down the auto pay on my dad's lease account. Left them a voicemail telling them I wasn't involved anymore, that he'd have to manage it himself. Then I pulled the plug on my mom's utility bill, the one I'd been covering since she temporarily lost her job in 2019. I wrote it all down, not as proof for them. They wouldn't believe me anyway. But for me, to mark the moment I stepped off the stage and out of the costume they'd stitched around me. And then, almost as if the universe wanted to laugh in my face, I got an email from my sister. Subject line, "Hey, funny question." I clicked, already bracing for it. She wanted to know if I could front her $2,000 for a time-sensitive retreat that she swore was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Something about crystals, healing, water fasting. I stopped reading after the part where she said, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to my personal archive folder with the label pattern recognition. That night, I sat outside on the lake house porch, lit the last piece of firewood I had, and stared at the flames until the sky went dark. I wasn't waiting for my phone to buzz anymore. I wasn't hoping someone would show up and say sorry. I'd stopped playing the invisible sun. Now I was just a man letting go. It had been 4 days since I left the lake house. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. I just packed what was left, threw the rest of the uneaten food into a cooler, and drove home in silence. The house smelled like nothing, that stale, neutral kind of silence that creeps in when no one's been around to break it. I didn't unpack, didn't check the mail. I just went upstairs, dropped onto the couch, and stared at the ceiling until it got dark. My phone had been quiet, and I liked it that way. But then, just after midnight, it buzzed. Ryan, my brother. The message was short, almost lazy in its lack of punctuation. Hey man, mom and dad are freaking out. Can you just talk to them or something? That's it. No, happy birthday. No, sorry we missed it. No, where were you? Just a vague ask to fix the mess. As if I was some kind of emotional janitor expected to mop up after their avoidance and denial. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, he texted again. I mean, come on, it's not that serious. That line, that stupid, infuriating line, not that serious. I stared at it, so long the screen dimmed and locked. It wasn't rage I felt. It was something worse, recognition. Ryan didn't get it because Ryan never had to. Of course, he thought it wasn't serious. His whole life had been one long golden hour, always flattering light, always someone to catch him when he stumbled, always a backup plan. I'd been the backup plan. Every single time. I decided to go for a walk. Not to cool off. I wasn't heated. I was hollow. I left my phone on the kitchen counter and walked out into the night. I ended up at the park down the street, the one we used to ride bikes through when we were kids. I sat on the same bench where I once ate melting ice cream while Ryan cried because he dropped his, and I gave him mine. He didn't remember that story, but I did. And that's what this all came down to, didn't it? They forget. I remember. They forget the times I gave up so they could have more. They forget the emergencies I dropped everything to handle. They forget the late night calls, the rent payments, the truck repairs, the favor after favor. And I remember every single one. Back at home, I finally picked up my phone. There was a new message. Not from Ryan this time. From Mom. Jake, we just don't understand what's going on. You've always been a strong one. Why are you acting like this now? I sat down slowly, reading it twice. They still didn't get it. Because in their minds, strength means silence. They didn't realize I wasn't acting out. I was finally acting for myself. I didn't want to write her back. Not because I was angry. That part had already passed. What I felt now was closer to grief. But not the kind you wear all over your face. The quiet kind. The kind that sits behind your ribs like a slow leak. You don't even notice it until you feel yourself sinking. Still, I wrote back. Because if I didn't, she'd call. Or worse, show up. So I opened a new message, stared at the blinking cursor, and just typed what felt real. You don't understand because you never tried to. You say I'm strong, but all you ever meant was convenient. You never noticed the weight until I put it down. So please don't ask why I'm not picking it back up. I sat with it, reread it a few times. There was no yelling, no blaming, just facts, my side of the line. And once I hit send, I turned off my phone completely. Not airplane mode, off. Like pulling the plug on the whole damn thing. The next morning, I woke up early. Couldn't sleep. Mind buzzing like static. I poured a cup of coffee, stood barefoot by the window, and watched the sun rise over a neighborhood that had no idea my entire world had just tilted. And I thought about something I hadn't let myself think before. What if they didn't miss me? What if they just missed what I did for them? What if the absence they felt wasn't emotional, but logistical? What if I was never the sun, just the bridge, the middleman, the fixer, the buffer zone between their chaos and their consequences? And now the bridge was gone. Later that day, I did something small but powerful. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote 3 words across the first page in thick, black ink. No more discounts. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about value. I'd spent years handing out emotional labor like it was on clearance. Listening when no one listened to me. Showing up when no one noticed I'd left. Caring when it was never reciprocated. No more. I tore the page out, folded it, taped it to the inside of my medicine cabinet, where I'd see it every morning. Just a reminder, I don't have to earn my worth through sacrifice. I don't have to light myself on fire to keep anyone else warm. That evening, just before sunset, I got one final message. This time from Dad. No greeting. No sign-off. Mortgage is 2 months behind. Just letting you know. Just letting me know. Like I was still in charge. Still on the hook. Still the bridge. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because they finally needed to learn what it meant when I wasn't there to carry it. The knock came on a Sunday. Not a text. Not a call. A real, old-fashioned knock. The kind that makes your stomach tighten before your brain catches up. I knew who it was before I opened the door. My brother Ryan, standing on the porch in a backwards cap and sunglasses like he thought that might make him look casual instead of calculated. He had the same smirk he always wore when he was trying to charm his way out of accountability. He didn't ask to come in. He just walked past me into the living room like nothing was broken. I didn't say a word. He sat on the couch, looked around like he was appraising the place. Then he said something so predictable it felt like déjà vu. Look, man, I don't know why you're being so dramatic. Dramatic. That word again. I sat in the chair across from him, arms folded, and just let him talk. He went on about how Mom and Dad were older now and not great with money, and how I had always been the one who understood this stuff. As if this was some kind of practical oversight, like they forgot to update a spreadsheet, not a 30-year pattern of using me until I broke. And then came the kicker. They're talking about selling the house. Unless someone helps. There it was. The real reason for the visit. Not concern. Not reconciliation. A pitch. And not even a good one. I asked him, calmly, if he thought it was fair that I'd been footing the bills for years while he played the role of lovable underachiever. He shrugged. That's just how it worked out, man. You're good at that stuff. I laughed. Actually laughed. Good at that stuff? Like financial sacrifice was a hobby. Like emotional exhaustion was a skill set. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that I wouldn't be helping. Not with the mortgage. Not with the taxes. Not with a dime. He frowned, like a toddler told he can't have candy before dinner. Then he said, "You're gonna regret this someday." I stood up. Not fast. Not angry. Just done. And I told him, no, I regret letting it go on this long. He didn't get it. Of course he didn't. He still thought this was about money. He didn't understand that this wasn't a withdrawal. It was closure. And as I watched him leave, hands in his pockets, shoulders slouched like the victim in a movie he wrote for himself, I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not triumph. Just the absence of weight. I'd carried this for so long, I didn't even realize how heavy it was until it was gone. A week went by. No texts. No calls. No knocks. The silence was loud, but peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. The kind of peace that makes you question how long you've been surviving in noise without realizing it. Then, late one night, I got an email. Not from my parents. Not from Ryan. It was from my aunt. Subject line, just so you know. I hesitated before opening it. She wasn't someone I spoke to often. She and my mom had always had that Cold War sibling energy. Tight smiles at family dinners, long pauses when the other spoke. But she had always been kind to me. Distant, but kind. I clicked it open. David, I'm only writing because I saw the messages going around. I thought you should know. Your mom told the family you've been struggling mentally. That this is just a phase. That you're bitter because you're turning 30 and didn't want to celebrate. I didn't believe it. I was at her house last weekend when she said it. I don't think she knows I heard. I know it's not my place, but I just wanted to say, I see you. I always have. I read it 3 times. Then I just sat there, in the dark, barefoot on the kitchen tile, cold coffee in my hand, heart going quiet like someone turned the volume down on the world. So that was the story they were telling now. That I was broken, emotional, unstable, bitter. Turning 30 hit me too hard. I was lashing out. Not that I was exhausted. Not that I was done being the family's life raft. Not that I had finally set a boundary no one liked because it stopped benefiting them. They had rewritten the truth into something they could pity, because pity requires less accountability than guilt. And somehow, my mom had made my silence into her narrative. That night, I didn't rage. I just stood in front of the mirror and said, out loud, for words I never gave myself permission to believe before, I didn't deserve that. And suddenly, it all felt lighter. Not easy, not fixed, but lighter. I didn't reply to my aunt's email. Not because I didn't appreciate it. I did, more than she'll probably ever know. But because it didn't ask for anything. It didn't demand a reaction. It just offered something I hadn't gotten from anyone else in this family. Recognition. No strings. No guilt trip. Just a small light in the fog that said, I see you. That was enough. So I took the rest of that week to make a plan. No dramatic social media post. No long letters sent to the family group chat. Just logistics. Clean, simple, final. I changed my number. Closed the joint credit card my mom still had on file just in case. Removed myself as the emergency contact for both parents. Replaced it with a number they'll have to look up if they want help. And I booked a solo trip. Nowhere fancy. A cabin in Montana. No Wi-Fi. Just me, a fireplace, and whatever I'm willing to bring with me. On the morning I left, I locked the front door, stood on the porch for a second, and just breathed. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt earned. On the flight, I didn't check my messages. I didn't wonder who might have noticed. I just read the same line in my notebook over and over again, the one I'd written back in part 6. No more discounts. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about teaching anyone a lesson. It was about finally valuing myself the way they never did, and no longer needing them to start. There are no fireworks in stories like this. No Hollywood ending. No tearful apologies on a rainy doorstep. Just a man, 30 years old, who finally figured out that silence can be a boundary, not a punishment. And for once, the quiet didn't feel like a punishment either. It felt like peace. Real, earned peace.